Hello, this is Thomas Capshew, and you're watching my YouTube channel, Consciousness Rising. Today we're going to talk about free will in episode 6. So if you like this content, please like, subscribe, share, comment, and I'd love to respond to your comments. So today we're going to try to pull apart a little bit the idea of free will and do humans have free will? This has been debated among humans for hundreds of years, and it's the old nature versus nurture argument, the old argument of conditioning versus making your own choices. I'm not sure we'll ever come to a definitive answer while we're in our human form, because we're embedded in this matrix of life, and it's almost like asking whether a fish knows it's swimming in water. So the best we can do is to kind of pull apart some of the factors or some of the ways where we can at least make a hypothesis that, that's probably not free will, that's probably the effect of other things. Let's develop a few hypotheses for what we call free will and freedom of choice. So the first one that is dominant in our society is, hell yeah, men have free will. And, until recently, we didn't include women in there, but humans have free will. In America in particular, we bolster this hypothesis with lots of American stories or narratives: rugged individualism, a self-made man, pull him up. He pulled himself up by his bootstraps. Those are all narratives about our will being the predominant thing that defines how our lives unfold. And so what we have is we have a society that is very individualistic and has very little emphasis on the collective. Other parts of the world have a totally different view of living in the world as humans. Many societies see the family as the primary unit and not really individuals, that you're defined by the family you're embedded in or you were born into. Americans, not so much. We really emphasize rugged individualism and the idea or the belief that my consciousness, my conscious awareness is what decides what happens in my life. That's one hypothesis, but it is probably not the only way that we can understand our choices. Another choice or another hypothesis is that we are driven or often influenced by our subconscious or our unconscious. So we make so free will is a product of our unconscious conditioning. So, for example, is my love of Indiana University an aspect of my free will, or is it my conditioning? I grew up in Bloomington, Indiana, where Indiana University main campus is. I went away to college. I didn't go to Indiana University to start with, but eventually, after 3.5 years at a college out of state, I transferred back to Indiana University. So my conditioning as a child was influenced by the things around me, and one of the things around me was my mom and dad, my parents, who both went to Indiana University. Dad graduated, mom started raising boys. So she didn't finish going to Indiana University with a degree, but she attended there for a while. So my choice to go to Indiana after I transferred from the college I went to in Arkansas was probably part free will, but part conditioning. And so I ended up graduating from Indiana University with a bachelor's in psychology, which is now called the School of Brain Psychology and Brain Science. That's why I'm so interested in brain science. So it could be both my conscious awareness that makes choices influenced by my unconscious or subconscious conditioning, the ways that I have been raised. So those are two possibilities of where my choices come from. They're all my conscious decision, or they're a product of my conditioning plus my conscious decision. So those are a couple of choices. Another one is that my choices are made by the product of a loving creator. That my choices aren't necessarily mine alone. They are influenced through my relationship with a creator. This is one of the bases for current Christianity, is you can either follow the rules of your creator and live your life and be saved, or you can go against the rules of your creator and you'll, according to fundamentalist Christians, you'll go to hell when you die because you used your will instead of following God's will. So that's a possible choice of a hypothesis of where our choices come from and where our free will comes from. And it has a little bit of viability, but maybe not in that context of fundamentalist Christianity. So, for example, if I look outside myself and say, well, some of my choices were influenced by my environment, but that environment was maybe pre-planned for me, then I could attribute some of the factors of my free will or my choices to a loving creator. Let me give you an example. So when I was in undergraduate studies at Indiana University, one of the jobs that I held to pay for my studies and to pay to live on my own was I was the janitor of a law firm. And I would go in on a regular basis and clean the office, often on the weekends and some weeknights. And at that, in that position, I had a contract with the law firm to clean the kitchen once a week. And so I'd come in during the week in the evenings, and somebody, whoever was making coffee, would drip coffee grinds and coffee across the room from the coffee maker to the trash can. And so I was supposed to clean the kitchen once a week, but I ended up having to clean it more frequently than my contract told me I needed to. So I wrote a note to the people in the law firm and posted it on the refrigerator in the kitchen and said, my contract says I'm supposed to clean the kitchen once a week, but you all are dripping coffee across the floor, and so I'm having to clean it more often. Can you be more careful with your coffee cleaning or your disposal of coffee grinds? The secretaries wrote me back. We had this back and forth and we resolved it. It wasn't a huge deal. A few months later, I was in the office cleaning, and one of the attorneys was in there doing some work to get ready for probably a trial. And he looked at me and he said, we've been enjoying your back and forth with the secretaries. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, we resolved it. And he's like, have you ever thought about going to law school? And I'm like, no. My dad was a CPA. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. Didn't even know any lawyers. And, he said, well, you write well and you make good arguments, so you'd be a good attorney. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I went on with my life and went out, and after I graduated from undergraduate, I bought a small business and was working 80 hours a week and making next to nothing. And this experience I had with the lawyer, I thought, wow, maybe I should go to law school. They work hard. I don't mind working hard. But they make a lot more money than I made at this small business I was running. And so I went to law school. So eventually, that's for another story, is leaving the practice of law. But as an example of free will, something put into my life path, being a janitor at a law firm, that then put a seed in my head that, well, maybe you could be a lawyer, which had never occurred to me before. And I eventually took that seed and sprouted it and went to law school and graduated, passed the bar exam, practiced law for 7 years, and then moved on from that. So it wasn't a conscious decision for me to say, I'm going to be a janitor at a law firm so I can get to know whether I'm good at being a lawyer so that I can go to law school. None of that was in my consciousness when I was trying to make money to pay for my schooling. But it played out that way. And, now that I look back on what I call the tapestry of my life, it's a wonderful, beautiful thread of the tapestry of my life that I went to law school, I practiced law. It helped me to hone my mind so that I can be incisive and, look at the nuances of what people say and what people do. Gave me a very good analytical mind. So, was that my free will? Was that a loving creator that kind of provided that opportunity in my path? I don't know. It's hard to say. What I do know is that I have a belief system now that free will is not just you deciding on your own what you want to do and going about doing that. My hypothesis is that, yes, we have a set of choices to make. They're limited because we don't know what we don't know, basically. They're limited by our experiences. Nobody in my family, extended family, had ever gone to law school or been an attorney. Nobody ever talked about attorneys. It just wasn't a part of my worldview from my experiences. And the experience of being a janitor at a law firm opened me up to the idea that I would go to law school. So my hypothesis is that all three of those factors work together. But there's one more factor that we haven't talked about. Some people have a strong belief that everything that happens in life is random. It isn't really directed by anybody or is part of any kind of plan. It's just a random series of occurrences that we navigate through. I think there's an element of that in my hypothesis about free will, but it's a smaller part than that. There are actually people who have the idea that we, in our spirit, our soul, set up our lessons to learn in life. And so it's not actually a creator. It's not actually our environment. It's not actually our conscious choice. It's preset that we've agreed to have a certain number of experiences that influence us in a certain way and hopefully provide the life that makes meaning for us. So I believe that actually the smaller part of the equation is my conscious choices, although when I'm in a choice point, it's very significant. But in the overall scheme of my life or my tapestry, I believe that there's lots of other factors that are working almost in conspiracy to lead my life in a certain direction. One of those, for me, is my relationship with whatever created me, whatever language you want to put for our common creator. There's lots of different ways we can put a label on that energetic force. I call it the creator or life force energy or spirit. But I believe that instead of being a rugged individual, I'm actually a part of that bigger life force. And so my choices are constrained by the amount to which I identify with that life force energy, which in my language, I call it light, life, and love. And so the more that I identify myself with love, the better my life seems to unfold and the better I can meet the challenges that come into my life. So my free will then is a process of giving my will to something bigger than me that can direct my life in a way that brings me happiness, joy, prosperity, abundance, connection, all of the things that are important to me. I've written an article that is entitled "Nothing Exists Outside of Relationship." Nothing exists outside of relationship. And I'll be posting that article in the show notes below. But it asserts that we cannot define ourselves without defining what we're not. So if that premise is true, then there is no free will. It's all connected. It's connected to our current consciousness, to our environment, our current environment, our past environment, and the conditioning that we've had, our connection to our creator, our common creator, and probably a little bit of randomness, although I'm still a skeptic about randomness. So thanks for joining me today for episode 6 on free will. And episode 7, I'm going to break out. That one's going to be on freedom. Episode 8 will be on the power of choice, because that is our greatest power. And today, for you, I wish you the ability to choose to nurture yourself today. Do something today that almost feels decadent to you. I'm not saying go spend a bunch of money or, fly off to Tahiti. Do something that is very nurturing for you today, that is a little bit out of the ordinary. Take an hour off and go for a walk in the woods, or stop by your favorite ice cream store and get ice cream. Or call your best friend and just say, I just called because I felt like it and I just wanted to hear your voice. How are you? So today, do something, make a choice to nurture yourself in a special way today. And thanks for listening. See you soon.